Loss of beauty is a catastrophe, because without that beauty, there's no call to higher being. You know, this is also why, you know, I've mentioned to people that they should clean up their rooms. That's become quite the internet meme. But I'm really serious about it, because it's really hard to do that. And it isn't just that you clean it up. You also make it beautiful. 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 It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. And it's really worthwhile. Make it beautiful. It's really hard to make something beautiful. Make it beautiful. And it's really worthwhile. What's really cool is if you learn to make something beautiful, even one thing, if you could just make one thing in your life beautiful, then you've established a relationship with beauty. And then you can start to expand that relationship with beauty out into the world, like into other elements of your life. And that is so worthwhile. It's just incredibly, crazily worthwhile. Make it beautiful. 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 And that's an invitation to the divine. Make it beautiful. You have to be daring to do that. Make it beautiful. And that's an invitation to the divine. Make it beautiful. You have to be daring to do that. People are terrified of it. People are terrified of color. They paint their walls beige. They're terrified of art. They buy some mass-produced thing because they don't want anybody laughing at them for their lack of taste. And they would get laughed at because they have no taste. But you have to, well, it's right, because what do you know, right? You have to develop it. And so you're going to stumble along and make mistakes to begin with. And you're going to show yourself, because if you buy, oh, I think this is pretty, and you know, somebody comes over and goes, hey, what's up with you? It's kind of hard on your self-esteem, but it's you're stumbling towards the right, you're stumbling towards the kingdom of God. That's what you're stumbling towards when you try to make an aesthetic decision. Make it beautiful. Aesthetic. 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 That's what you're stumbling towards when you try to put something in your life that's beautiful, and it's unbelievably worthwhile to do that. And you have to steer clear of the frauds and the con artists and all of that, and art is full of that, of course, because it's difficult to distinguish between the real thing and the fraud, but it's unbelievably worthwhile. Beauty is so valuable, and we're so afraid of it. It's not the only pathway to the divine. Love is one of them, I suppose. But beauty, especially for people who have an affinity for beauty, it's like music. It's one of those things that you can't argue against. You can't even understand. It just hits you. It just hits you. It's like a vision of the potential future. That if we just got our act together and beautified things, that's the place that we can inhabit, and that would ennoble us. And that's why Jerusalem, the heavenly city, is paved with gemstones. They're crystalline, they emit light. And yeah, it's the proper dwelling place for an enlightened consciousness. Beauty is the proper dwelling place for an enlightened consciousness. We ignore it at our spiritual and economic peril. It's obvious. There's almost nothing more valuable than beauty. You know, in Sleeping Beauty goes to sleep. And the reason she goes to sleep is because she has parents who are quite old. And so they're pretty desperate to have a child, like so many people are now. And they only have one child, like so many people do now. They don't want anything to happen to this child, because like, hey, it's a miracle. And she's the princess. We're not letting anything around her. So they have a big christening party. And they invite everybody, but they don't invite Maleficent. And Maleficent is the terrible mother. She's nature. She's like the thing that goes bump in the night. She's the devil herself, so to speak. She's everything that you don't want your child to encounter. So the king and queen say, well, we just want to invite her to the christening. It's like, good luck with that. That's an Oedipal story. The Oedipal mother is the mother who devours her child by overprotecting him or her, so that instead of being strengthened by an encounter with the terrible world, they're weakened by too much protection. And then when they're let out into the world, they cannot live. And that's the story of Sleeping Beauty. And they apologize to Maleficent when she first shows up and say, well, you know, they have a bunch of half-witted excuses why they don't invite her. We forgot. It's like, I don't think so. You don't forget something like that. And she kind of makes that point. It's right, the whole horror of life. You don't forget about that when you have a child, that's for sure. You might wish that it would stay at bay, but you do not forget about it. The question is, do you invite it to the party? And the answer is, it bloody well depends how unconscious you want your child to be. And if you want your child to be unconscious, well, then you have the added advantage that maybe they won't leave home. And so you can take advantage of them for the rest of your sad life instead of going off to find something to do for yourself. Of course, you can take revenge on them if they do have any impetus towards courage that you sacrificed yourself 30 years ago and want to stamp out as soon as you see it develop in your child. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. So that's what happens in Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, well, none of this is pleasant, and nothing that happens in that story is pleasant. So Sleeping Beauty, she's naive as hell. They put her out in the forest and have her raised by these goody two-shoes fairies. And then the first idiot prince that wanders by, she falls in love with so badly that she has post-traumatic stress disorder when he rides off on his horse. That's what happens. And she goes into the castle and she's all freaked out because she met the love of her life for like 5 minutes. That's when the spinning wheel, that's the wheel of fate, pops up and she pricks her finger. They try to get rid of all the spinning wheels. They try to get rid of all the wheels of fate with their pointed end. But she finds it, pricks her finger, and falls down. Well, she wants to be unconscious. No bloody wonder. She was protected her whole life. She's so damn naive that her first love affair just about kills her. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. Never wake up. Never wake up. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. And so that's exactly what happens. And then she has to wait for the prince to come and rescue her. Well, you think, how sexist can you get? That's a boneheaded way of looking at the story, because the prince isn't just a man who's coming to rescue the woman. And the prince also represents the woman's own consciousness. Without that forward-going, courageous consciousness, the woman herself will drift into unconsciousness and terror. All she can do is lay there and sleep, like the sleep of the naive and damned. She has to wake herself up and bring her own consciousness, her own masculine consciousness into the forefront so that she can survive in the world. That's partly what's implicit in this idea, is that unless the woman is taken out of man, so to speak, then she isn't a human being. She's just a creature, and that's partly what's embedded in this story. So you don't want to read it as a patriarchal. You don't want to read anything that way. New Age people are very creative, but they can't think critically. But I can think critically. So this is a creative, theoretical enterprise conjoined with the capacity to tell the difference between bad ideas and good ideas. And hopefully, what I'm going to talk to you about are the greatest ideas that humanity has ever produced. There are also ideas that we don't understand well, and whose highest level of formal development we risk forgetting because we're criticizing things that we invented as a species, but that we cannot understand rationally. And we're predisposed to believe that ideas that we can't understand rationally have to be wrong. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes we're just not smart enough to understand them. So, I don't know. Question? What could you do to improve yourself? Well, the first question might be, why should you even bother improving yourself? And I think the answer to that is something like, so you don't suffer any more stupidly than you have to. And maybe so others don't have to either. It's something like that. You know, like there's a real injunction at the bottom of it. It's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it, and in a big way, and so will the people around you. And you could say, well, I don't care about that, but that's actually not true. You actually do care about that, because if you're in pain, you will care about it. And so you do care about it, even if it's just that negative way, you know. It's very rare that you can find someone who's in excruciating pain who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this. Pain is one of those things that brings the idea that it would be better if it didn't exist along with it. It's incontrovertible. You get your act together so that there isn't any more stupid pain around you than necessary.
Question?
Well, how would you go about getting your act together? And the answer to that is something like, look around for something that bothers you and see if you can fix it. Fix it. Fix it. And see if you can fix it. Fix it. Fix it. Fix it. And see if you can fix it. So now you think, well, you can do this in a room. It's quite fun. Maybe your bedroom, you can sit there and just sort of meditate on it. If I wanted to spend 10 minutes making this room better, what would I have to do? But you have to ask yourself that, right? It's not a command, it's like a genuine question.
Question?
And things will pop out in the room. There's a stack of papers over there that's kind of bugging you, and things will pop out in the room. You know that maybe a little order there would be a good thing. And things will pop out in the room. There's some rubbish behind your computer monitor. And things will pop out in the room. The room would be slightly better. It was a little less dusty and the cables weren't all tangled up the same way. And if you allow yourself just to consider the expanse in which you exist at that moment, there'll be all sorts of things that'll pop out in it that you could just fix. And, you know, I might say, well, if you were coming to see me for psychotherapy, this easiest thing for us to do first would just be to get you to organize your room. You think, well, is that psychotherapy? And the answer is, well, it depends on how you conceive the limits of your being. And I would say, start where you can start. You know, if something announces itself to you, which is a strange way of thinking about it, as in need of repair, that you could repair, then, hey, fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. Fix it. Now, I often tell people too, fix the things you repeat every day. Fix it. Because people tend to think of those as trivial. Fix it. Those probably constitute 50% of your life. And people think, well, they're mundane, I don't need to pay attention to them. It's like, no, that's exactly wrong. The things you do every day, those are the most important things you do. Hands down. So 100 adjustments to your broader domain of being, and there's a lot less rubbish around and a lot fewer traps for you to step into. Traps for you to step into. Traps for you to step into.
Traps for you to step into.
Once you've got your mind and your emotions together, and once you're acting that out, then you can extend what you're willing to consider yourself and start fixing up the things that are a part of your broader extent. Now, just because things announce themselves as in need of repair doesn't mean that it's you right then and there that should repair them. You have to have some humility. You don't walk up to a helicopter that isn't working and just start tinkering away with it. You have to stay within your domain of competence. I like the idea of the room because you can do that at the drop of a hat. Go back to where you live and sit down and think, okay, I'm going to make this place better for half an hour. What should I do? You have to ask, and things will just pop up like mad. And it's partly because your mind is a very strange thing. As soon as you give it an aim, a genuine aim, it'll reconfigure the world in keeping with that aim. Be careful what you aim at. What you aim at determines the way the world manifests itself to you. And so if the world is manifesting itself in a very negative way, one thing to ask is, are you aiming at the right thing? You know, I'm not trying to reduce everybody's problems to an improper aim. People get cut off at the knees for all sorts of reasons. There's a random element to being, that's for sure. And things do happen to people, but it's still a great thing to ask. Be careful what you aim at. Be careful what you aim at. Be careful what you aim at. powerful way you wave at. When I started working on this problem, or I guess when it started working on me, it was probably really in the mid-80s. I found myself suffering from two things. One was a very lengthy sequence of nightmares about nuclear destruction. And they're very affecting dreams. And associated with that was a sense of amazement that a dream that was that awful could reflect a reality that could be that awful. And an additional amazement at the fact that despite the production of tens and thousands of weapons of unimaginable destruction, that people could go about their day-to-day lives without acting as if anything fundamental whatsoever had changed. Now, I've never really been able to figure out why that disturbed me so much when it seemed to not disturb most of the people I knew. It doesn't really matter. I probably spent my whole life trying to understand what evil was, and more importantly, what might be done about it. Before you can dare to talk about something like evil, you should do some thinking about what it is that you're talking about. And I don't think you can talk about it at all until you distinguish it from tragedy. The nature of human being is such that it consists of a confrontation with the bounded finite with the unbounded infinite. That those are the bare facts of the matter. The bounded finite with the unbounded infinite. The world of experience as it presents itself to us is literally and not metaphorically complex beyond our capacity to understand. And that means people deal in a real sense on an ongoing basis with the infinite. That fact is the reason why religious experience is essentially endemic to mankind. It's a human universal, and it's not because people believe. Human existence consists of a confrontation between the finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. The finite and the infinite. And religious systems merely take that into account. Now, our finitude in the face of the infinite has some inevitable consequences. Those consequences are essentially the existential conditions of life. The finite is always overwhelmed by the infinite. It has to be, because it can't encapsulate it. And so what that means is that suffering is central to the nature of human existence. Suffering exists as the consequences of our limitations. Every single person who's alive is going to die. And every single person who's alive is going to deal with serious physical illness and mental distress. And so the fact of our finitude is it's central to the nature of our being, and we're forced to deal with it on an ongoing basis. If you could do absolutely anything you wanted at any point and be anywhere you wanted to be, anything you wanted, and if there was nothing that was out of your reach, there would be nothing to do. There's no story, and there's no being, and there's something about being that is a story, and without limitation, there's no story. Humans are vulnerable, and that's tragic. But if tragedy is the price that we pay for existence, then so be it. And so tragedy itself can't be regarded as evil. It's a condition of existence. So earthquakes aren't evil, and cancer isn't evil, and mental illness isn't evil, and predators aren't evil. So earthquakes aren't evil, and cancer isn't evil, and earthquakes aren't evil, and cancer isn't evil, and mental illness isn't evil, and predators aren't evil. They just are part of the way things are. But there are certain categories of human action that are definitely outside the parameters of mere tragedy, and those are the things we really have to get a handle on. Evil for me is differentiated from tragedy by its lack of necessity and its voluntarism. Evil is more pernicious than that which is generated by social inequality. I think it's actually a form of demonically warped aesthetic, demonically warped aesthetic, aesthetic, demonically warped aesthetic, demonically warped aesthetic. The motto on the gates of Auschwitz: work will make you free. That's an aesthetic of evil, to make a joke, terrible, ironic joke. It's instructive to meditate on what sort of imagination would have the arrogance tell such a terrible joke. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? Those are famous lines. That's sort of Christ the hippie, right? It's like, hey, let it all hang out. That's an old phrase. Do your thing and everything will come to you. Let it all hang out. That's an old phrase. Do your thing and everything will come to you. But that's seriously not the proper interpretation, because there's a kicker with this, and the kicker is this. For your heavenly Father knows that you have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's a lot different than the hippie thing. That's a lot different than the hippie thing, right? That's a lot different than the hippie thing. That's a lot different than the hippie thing, right? There's a very interesting idea here. It's certainly one of the most profound ideas that I've ever encountered. If you configure your life so that what you are genuinely doing is aiming at the highest possible good, then the things that you need to survive and to thrive on a day-to-day basis will deliver themselves to you. If you dare to do the most difficult thing that you can conceptualize, your life will work out better than it will if you do anything else. Well, how are you going to find out if that's true? There's no way you're going to find out whether or not that's true unless you do it. You have to be all in this game. It's like what happens at the beginning of the story of Pinocchio is that Geppetto wishes on a star. So what Geppetto does is align himself with the metaphorical manifestation of the highest good he can conceptualize. He aims at the star. And for him, the star is the possibility that he can take his creation, a puppet, whose strings are being pulled by unseen forces, and have it transform into something that's autonomous and real. Well, that's a hell of an ambition. You know, and we're wise enough to put that in a children's movie, but too foolish to understand what it means. It's such an interesting juxtaposition that we can both know that and not know it at the same time. You can go to the movie, you can watch it, and it makes sense. But that doesn't mean that you can go home and think, well, I know what that meant. Well, people are complicated, right? We exist at different levels, and all the levels don't communicate with one another. But the movie is a hypothesis, and the hypothesis is there's no better pathway to self-realization and the ennoblement of being than to posit the highest good that you can conceive of and commit yourself to it. And then you might also ask yourself, and this is definitely worth asking, is do you really have anything better to do? And if you don't, well, why would you do anything else?
Therefore take no thought for the morrow, for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof.
I spent a long time trying to figure out what that meant too, because it's another one of those lines that can easily be read as pro-grasshopper and anti-ant. Remember the old fable of the grasshopper and the ant? Maybe not. I'm not going to tell it, but The ant works and the grasshopper fiddles. The ant has a pretty good time in the winter and the grasshopper dies. This is like a pro-grasshopper line, but it's not. It says something else. It says that if you orient yourself properly and then pay attention to what you do every day, that works. That works. That works. I actually think that that's in accordance with what we have come to understand about human perception, because what happens is that the world shifts itself around your aim. You're a creature that has an aim. You have to have an aim in order to do something. You're an aiming creature. You look at a point and you move towards it. It's built right into you. And so you have an aim. Well, let's say your aim is the highest possible aim. Well, then, so that sets up the world around you. It organizes all of your perceptions. It organizes what you see and you don't see. It organizes your emotions and your motivations. So you organize yourself around that aim. And then what happens is the day manifests itself as a set of challenges and problems. And if you solve them properly, then you stay on the pathway towards that aim. And you can concentrate on the day. And so that way you get to have your cake and eat it too. Because you can point into the distance, the far distance. And you can live in the day. Live in the day. Live in the day. And you can live in the day. That makes every moment of the day supercharged with meaning, because if everything that you're doing every day is related to the highest possible aim that you can conceptualize, well, that's the very definition of the meaning that would sustain you in your life. Well, and then the issue is back to Noah. Well, all hell's about to break loose and chaos is coming. It's like when that's happening in your life, you might want to be doing something that you regard as truly worthwhile, because that's what will keep you afloat when everything is flooded. And you don't want to wait until the flood comes to start doing that, because if your ark's half built and you don't know how to captain it, the probability is very high that you'll drown. I'm quite enamored of lobsters, as some of you might know, because I found out, this just blew me away when I found it out, just exactly how much continuity there was in the neurochemistry of human beings and the neurochemistry of animals. It's absolutely staggering. It's the sort of thing that makes the fact of evolution something like self-evident. Random mutation and natural selection is the only way you can solve the problem of how to deal with an environment that's complex beyond your ability to comprehend. I think what you do is you generate endless variants, because God only knows what the hell's going to happen next. Almost all of them die because they're failures, and a couple propagate. And you know, the environment keeps moving around like a giant snake. You never know what it's going to do next. And so the best you can do is say, well, here's 30 things that might work, and you know, 28 of them are going to perish. Anyways, back to the lobsters. So these creatures engage in dominance disputes. So it really is the toughest lobster that wins. And what's so cool about the lobster is that when a lobster wins, he flexes and gets bigger. So he looks bigger because he's a winner. It's like he's advertising that. And the neurochemical system that makes him flex is serotonergic. And you think, well, who cares? What the hell does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It's the same chemical that's affected by antidepressants in human beings. And so, like, if you're depressed, you're a defeated lobster. Like, you're like this. I'm small. You know, things are dangerous. I don't want to fight. You give someone an antidepressant, it's like they stretch, and then they're ready to, like, take on the world again. Well, if you give lobsters who just got defeated in a fight serotonin, then they stretch out and they'll fight again. And that's, like, we separated from those creatures on the evolutionary timescale somewhere between 350 and 600 million years ago, and the damn neurochemistry is the same. And so that's another indication of just how important hierarchies of authority are. Okay, so here's a problem. There's a big problem here. The problem is, it's true. You're oppressed, 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 you're oppressed. God only knows why. Maybe you're too short, or you're not as beautiful as you could be, or your grandparent was a serf, likely, because almost everybody's great-grandparent was. you know, and you're not as smart as you could be, and you have a sick relative, and you have your own physical problems. Frankly, you're a mess. And you're oppressed in every possible way, including your ancestry and your biology. And the entire sum of human history has conspired to produce victimized you with all your individual pathological problems. It's like, yes, true. Okay, but the problem is that it is true. And so if you take the oppressed, you have to fractionate them and fractionate them. It's like, you're a woman. Yeah, okay, well, I'm a black woman. Well, I'm a black woman who has 2 children. Well, I'm a black woman who has 2 children and one of them isn't very healthy. And then, well, I'm a Hispanic woman and I have a genius son who doesn't have any money so that he can't go to university. And, you know, I had a hell of a time getting across the border. It was really hard on me to get my citizenship. My husband is an alcoholic brute. It's like, well, yeah, that sucks too. And so let's fix all your oppression. Let's fix all your oppression. Let's fix all your oppression. And we'll take every single thing into account, and then we'll fix yours too. We'll take every single thing into account. It's like, no, you won't. No, you won't. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because you can't. You can't. It is technically impossible. First of all, you can't even list all the ways that you're oppressed. Second, how are you going to weight them? Third, who's going to decide? That's the bloody thing. Who's going to decide? Who's going to decide? That's the thing. Well, what's the answer in the West? It's like, in free markets, oh yeah, Christ, we'll never be able to solve this problem. No one can solve it. What are we going to do about that? We're going to outsource it to the marketplace. You're going to take your sorry, pathetic being and you're going to try to offer me something that maybe I want. And I'm going to take my sorry, pathetic being and I'm going to say, well, all things considered, as well as I can understand them, maybe I could give you this much money, which is actually a promise, for that thing. And you've packed all of your damn oppression into the price. And I've packed all my oppression into the willingness to pay it. And that solution sucks. It's a bad solution. But compared to every other solution, man, it's why 10% of us have freedom. And so there's a tremendous illogic at the bottom of this. It's like, you have to fractionate the oppressed all the way down to the level of the individual. Well, that's what the West figured out. You know, there's a couple of figures who are at the mythological roots of our culture, and you know, people get upset with me because I bring in religious themes, but I understand some things about mythology and religion. It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So what do you do about that? Well, I thought about that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn mob, because all that does is allow you to be as horrible as you could possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences. That's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it. Try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Well, that's the truth. You know, I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just can't even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes! You have a lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit. And that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering. That's what the religious people have always said. Life is suffering. Yes. Well, who wants to admit that? What do you do in the face of that suffering? Try to reduce it. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together for Christ's sake so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in the corner and you can help plan the funeral. And you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus. Obviously. Put yourself together. You know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could like polish up a little bit that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having to be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're like doomed to spend Christmas with. So then you fix yourself up a little bit, kind of humbly, because, you know, God, you're a fixer-upper if there ever was one. And then you got to figure out, well, can you figure out how to make peace with your idiot brother? And probably not, because he's just as dumb as you, so how the hell are you going to manage that? And so then maybe you get somewhere that way, and your family's sort of functioning, and you find out, well, that kind of relieved a little bit of suffering, although it reduced the opportunities for spiteful revenge, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. And so then you get your family together a little bit, and you're a little clued in then, at least a bit, because you've done something difficult that's actually difficult. You're a little wiser, and so then maybe you could put a tentative finger out beyond the family and try to change some little thing without wrecking it. Our society is complex, and we teach our students that they could just fix it. It's like, go fix a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. You're like a chimp with a wrench. Whack! Whack! Oh, look! It's better! It's like, no! It's not better. Things are complicated, and to fix things is really hard. And you have to be like a golden tool to fix things, and you're not. And that's the other message of the West. How do you overcome the suffering of life? Just be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, you know, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters. You're going to have to carry that with you. Or do you want to just forget about the whole meaning thing, and then you don't have any responsibility because who the hell cares, and you can wander through life doing whatever you want, gratifying impulsive desires for how useful that's going to be, and you're stuck in meaninglessness, but you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you want? Well, ask yourself, which one are you pursuing? And you'll find very rapidly that it isn't the majority of your soul that's pursuing the whole meaning thing, because well, look what you have to do that. You have to take on the fact that life is suffering. You have to put yourself together in the face of that. Well, that's hard. Christ, it's amazing people can even do it. I'm stunned every day when I go outside, and it isn't a riot with everything burning. I knew this guy, he'd been in a motorcycle accident and it really ruined him, and he was like a linesman, you know, working on the power, and he was working with someone who had Parkinson's disease, and they had complementary inadequacies, and so two of them could do the job of one person, and so they're out there fixing power lines in the freezing cold, despite the fact that one was 3/4 wrecked with a motorcycle accident and the other one had Parkinson's. That's how our civilization works. It's like there's all these ruined people out there. They've got problems like you can't believe. Off they go to work and do things they don't even like. And look, the lights are on. My God, it's unbelievable. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And we're so ungrateful. They're so ungrateful. You know, they don't know that they're surrounded by just a bloody miracle. It's a miracle that all this stuff works. That all you crazy chimpanzees that don't know each other can sit in the same room for 2 hours sweltering away without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. So, anyways, so what happened? Well, I made some videos and I got to the bottom of some things, at least as far as I can tell, so I told you what the bottom is, and then I got this idea about what you might do about it, which isn't my idea. It's not my idea. It's an old idea. It's far older than Christianity. It's old. It's the oldest story of mankind. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Make the suffering in the world less. Well, that's the way forward, as far as I can tell, if there is any way forward. And that's what it looks like to me. So, that's it.
Akira
The Don.